Hey guys, this is Shadsoft11 here, doing another series review. For today we look at Sonic the Hedgehog 4 episodes 1 and 2. Now as I'm reviewing these games, I will focus on them and them only, and I'm going to try not to let nostalgia cloud my judgment here. So with that being said, let's dive right in. The storyline for these games goes back to the basics. In episode 1, Sonic has to try and stop Eggman from taking over the world, and that's pretty much it. In episode 2, same story, though Tails joins you for a ride, and Metal Sonic is brought back as well. And in episode Metal, you get to play as him to see how he found Sonic and Tails. And that's literally it, shortest summary ever. The gameplay for these games attempts to recapture the feel of the classic games. Episode 1 takes Sonic through 5 levels where you go from point A to point B or fight a boss battle. Sonic can run, jump and do a spin dash like normal, but new to his arsenal is the homing attack where you zero in on enemies. This move is actually very well implemented as it can be useful for getting to other areas you otherwise couldn't access. The levels themselves do good job at beefing up the exploration and varying routes that I liked about the classic games. The levels don't have great originality as they are all based off levels in the Genesis titles such as Emerald Hill, Casino Night, Labyrinth and Metropolis. But what I like about each stage though is that they build upon the design archetypes they're based off. Casino Street not only has pinball and slot machines, but they now do poker hands and rows of cards. Mad Gear lets you run on cogs to cause things to happen in the environment, but my favourite level has to be Lost Labyrinth because each act has its own unique gimmick to it. Act 1 has you running away from boulders, Act 2 Sonic's in a dark cave and has to use a torch to light the way, and Act 3 is the usual underwater level. Whilst the level design hits the mark, the bosses sadly leave something to be desired. It's the typical Eggman mechs and the fights are loosely based around the ones you fight in the original levels, but with Sonic's homing attack it does manage to eliminate the challenge. The only real exception here is the final boss based off the Death Egg in Sonic 2, except here he's a lot more challenging. The special stages are also reminiscent of those of Sonic 1, but this time you rotate them yourself and you're timed. I personally like them better than the Sonic 1 special stages because of the more freedom of control you have, plus the time limit ups the challenge factor. And also returning is Super Sonic, who can now be activated whenever you want throughout the stages. I also must say this. Thank you for relegating a different button to activate Super Sonic instead of making it the jump button, meaning you're forced to go super against your own will. Thank you. One last thing to say is the levels offer both score attack mode, which is your standard fare for a 2D Sonic game, and time attack mode, where you have to get through the level without checkpoints and get the best time. And I think that's pretty much it. Now I'll talk about episode 2. Following on from episode 1, episode 2 stays true to the high-speed platforming its predecessor established, but adds new things to the table, the most noticeable being that Tails is now included in the game. But instead of following Sonic and doing next to nothing, he now plays a vital role in the levels. You can use Tails to fly up to hard to reach places, do a double spin dash which can break through certain walls and snow, and the Tails sub which lets him pull Sonic along in the water. Sweet! Fuck you, water levels! This offers even more possibilities for exploration throughout the levels, and that's definitely a good thing. Aside from doing it single player, the game also has a multiplayer option, where one person controls Sonic and the other controls Tails. This can be fun to try out your teamwork skills or argue over who gets to be Tails. There's more creative thought gone into the levels this time. Rather than your typical Green Hill style first level, Sylvania Castle is a moonlight realm. White Park is a snow level and a theme park level combined. Oil Desert is an oil field which gets hit by freak sandstorms. After that you pretty much have Wing Fortress and Death Egg, but still it's nice to see some more creative juices being used here. White Park is a prime example of this. Now as many of you may know by now, I generally tend to like snow levels in Sonic games, and this one doesn't disappoint. Act 1 has avalanches that chase you along with some snowboarding. Act 2 is very much a roller coaster ride where you're platforming on shifting tracks, and Act 3 is the icy underwater scenario. Also the Sky Fortress Act 1 is a souped up version of the Sky Chase from Sonic 2, except without that annoying spin dash glitch. And Act 2 has fast paced platforming and certain elements of parkour. It's one of my favourite acts in the game. The boss battles are another big improvement here. Eggman has his egg pod, but what it's attached to are huge behemoths of machines done in fighting styles never before seen in a Sonic game. They add a lot to the game's creativity and challenge. Also, you get to fight Metal Sonic, and his fights are a lot more fun and fulfilling than his race in Sonic CD. First you battle him on a roller coaster where you alternate between the background and foreground, and you even get to fight him on the tornado in the sky. Just like how Episode 1 has special stages inspired by the first Sonic game, Episode 2 uses Sonic 2 inspired special stages. Now, coming from someone who hates the Sonic 2 special stages, these are much more fun. Why? Because 1, you can control your speed and use a boost button. There's more tricks that can be done, and the stages are now more lenient with rings, so there's more room for error. Also, Tails doesn't act retarded like he did in Sonic 2. One final thing to mention about Episode 2 is the lock-on technology, where if you bought both episodes on the same console, you unlock Episode Metal, which lets you play through 4 redesigned stages from the first episode as Metal Sonic, to see the time span between his defeat in Sonic CD and coming across Sonic and Tails in this episode. A nice little extra for those who paid for both. And that's pretty much it, now moving on. For the graphics, these games don't just take the 16-bit sprite styles from the Genesis games, similar to what Mega Man 9 and 10 did, but instead update the looks of the games, but try and give them the flavour of the classic games. And as they stand, the levels are vibrant and colourful like what you'd expect. Also, the character models have more fluid motion than before. I particularly like the trippy voids of the special stages in Episode 1, it's like you're looking into a kaleidoscope. However, as Episode 1 has a Wii release, they weren't able to fully utilise the PS3's HD capabilities, which is why Episode 2 never had a Wii release. Compare the two side by side, and it's obvious that Episode 2 has better graphics, as they are more crisp and look less synthetic. Also, the more creative design concept Episode 2 offers does help matters, and the constantly rotating gravity stage of Death Egg Mark II looks impressive, but a bit nauseating. So whilst both games are on different levels from a technical standpoint, artistically they are both appealing to the eyes. Now for the music. Much like the graphics, the music attempts to capture the feel of the classic games, but with more modernised sound. Episode 1 has some pretty catchy tunes and melodies for the levels. I particularly enjoyed the themes to Splash Hill and Lost Labyrinth. Some tunes, however, feel too short, and as they do loop over and over again in the levels, they can get tiring. Also, not a fan of this theme. I don't know, I just don't get any boss vibes from it, but the pinch music is better though. Now, Episode 2 has a similar style of music. However, I think I prefer the music in this game. I feel the instrumentation is better, and same with the graphics, it's less synthetic than its predecessor. I love the theme for Act 2 of Sky Fortress. Oil Desert Act 1 was good, and tell me I wasn't the only one who got Twinkle Park vibes from Act 2 of White Park. For the sound effects, it's the standard fare, with the jumping and ring sound effects we've all come to know and love. One thing I do find a little annoying though is in Episode Metal Sonic makes more robotic sounds for jumping and getting hit, but it feels a bit too loud at times. But that's just me nitpicking. So the music is good, and the sound effects good also. And now for the rants. Starting with Episode 1, this game is a fun return to 2D greatness, but one thing I have to bring up is the physics. This has been said before by other people, but for those who don't know, this game has certain problems. For one, Sonic now walks up walls and stands there. I guess one of the bugs of Sonic 06 laid eggs in this game. The spin dash also doesn't gain much momentum when he's going down hills, and whenever Sonic launches off a hill, he uncurls, which leaves you vulnerable. For those who aren't accustomed to this, you could easily take damage just because you hadn't got used to it. Now don't get me wrong, none of these lapses in the game's physics are so bad they make the game unplayable, but if they were trying to recapture the feel of the classic games, the least they could do was get the play control to feel like them. As established before, the boss battles are mediocre and too easy. Well, the same could be true with the game being too easy. This is one of the few games where you can get the life count past 99. Even though there's a couple of levels where you might die a few times, the game is so generous with lives to a point that if you get a score of over 10,000 points at the end of a level, you get another life. I mean, is the game really that worried people won't be able to beat it? Being that there's only 4 stages in the game plus the final stage, the game is too short, so short and easy is not a good combination for replay value. Episode 2 attempts to rectify these mistakes, and as said before, the boss battles are much better, but more importantly, are the physics better? Yes, uncurling, gone. Spin dash now has more momentum to it, and Sonic doesn't just walk up walls. The game has a much closer feel to the Genesis titles than Episode 1 did. The game is round about the same length as Episode 1, but there's definitely a higher challenge factor than before, particularly for the final boss, although this fight can be very annoying due to him constantly electrifying the floor, and to get that last hit with a double spin dash, you have to wait for the perfect moment to use it, otherwise he's guaranteed to fry your ass. Super Sonic also returns in this game. Now, he kicked ass in Episode 1, so he should be awesome here, right? Well, actually no. He starts out fine, except when you have to use Tails, it cancels out the super form. Yeah, you have to be regular Sonic to use Tails. To an extent, it can be useful if you want to cancel out your super form, but you end up doing it more often than you'd like. Aside from local multiplayer, the game also has an online multiplayer as well. However, I rarely find anyone online to play with, and when I do, I occasionally come across lag, so the online mode is a rather mediocre offering. Okay, ranting over. So, overall, what do I think of Sonic 4? I think it's pretty good. Episode 1 may not have aged that well, and if you expect the game's physics to feel like the classics, then you'll probably be in for disappointment. But Episode 2, however, fixes these problems and then some, with more creative levels, better use of Tails, and just overall a better game. If you only had enough money for one, I say go for Episode 2, as it is the superior of the two, but to be fair, I'd be lying if I said I didn't have fun with Episode 1, because that game did have some really good ideas implemented into the levels, and the special stages were really good. But Episode 2 showed that taking steps forwards is never a bad idea. So you know what, why not get both? It doubles the fun. And all I can say regarding Episode 3, Sega, please don't give up on Sonic 4, make Episode 3 happen. Bearing in mind the improvements Episode 2 made, imagine how good Episode 3 will be, or could be. But for now, enjoy both these games. And so, Tom's final score for Episode 1, 7.8 out of 10. And my final score for Episode 2, 8.7 out of 10.